I would like to welcome you to today's event in honor of Dr. Mohamed Maait. So we're very happy to have you with us. Before we start, I would like you to turn off your mobile or put it on silent. I would like to share with you some of Heba's forthcoming events. On Sunday, next Sunday, we're having the Minister of Foreign Affairs addressing Heba. I would like to give the floor to our chairman, Khalil, who's going to do the welcome remarks. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it's my pleasure on behalf of Heba and the board of Heba to welcome you to this panel discussion with the Honorable His Excellency Dr. Maait, Minister of Finance. The session will discuss how Egypt can shift forwards towards green and sustainable finance to help mitigate climate changes across the markets. His Excellent Dr. Maait will give a presentation, and that will be followed by the panel discussion. The panelists who are with us today are Mrs. Heba Abdel, Head of Financial Institutions and Correspondent Banking, Commercial International Bank, Mr. Khalil, Bawab, CEO and Managing Director, Misr Capital, and of course, my dear friend, Mr. Todd Wilcox, CEO and Deputy Chairman of HSBC Bank Egypt. And the moderator is our dear old friend and Heba member, Khalil, investment banker and country director, Egypt for Colliers International, and he will be moderating the session. Before I leave the floor, I'd like to recognize our main sponsors, the Suez Canal Bank, and also our event partners, Banque du Caire, CIB, QNB Al Ahli, and Tatweer Masr. Without further ado, I'll leave the floor to Mr. Hussein Rifa'i, Chairman and Managing Director of Suez Canal Bank, who will introduce the Minister.
Dr. Mohamed Maait is currently serving as the Minister of Finance. Prior to his appointment as a minister, he held the position of Vice Minister of Finance, of Public Treasury Affairs, and Head of Economic Justice Unit. In addition, he served as First Deputy Minister of Finance in 2015, and as a Deputy to the Minister of Finance for Pension and Social Insurance during the period of 2009 and 2013. In addition, he served as First Deputy Minister of Health and Population between 2014 and 15. Over his career of 33 years, he held many positions such as Vice Chairman of the Egyptian Financial Supervisory Authority between 2013 and 2015, also Chairman of the Egyptian Governmental Actuarial Department at the Ministry of Finance between 2010 and 2013. Vice Chairman of the National Organization for Social Insurance between 2011 and 2012, Senior Advisor to the Minister of Finance between 2007 and 2009. He was also appointed as the Executive Director of the Egyptian Insurance Institute in 2007. He also worked as a senior lecturer and has more than 30 years of teaching and researching experience at many universities in Egypt, Sudan, England, and Scotland. He's also a member of many national and international committees and board of directors. Dr. Maait hold a bachelor degree in insurance and in mathematics from Cairo University in Egypt in 1984, and a master in insurance from Cairo University 1992. He also has a diploma in 1996, and also a master in actuarial science in 1997, and PhD degree in actuarial science from City University, London, UK in 2003. Please welcome Dr. Maait.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا وسهلا بكم، وسعيد إن أنا أكون معاكم النهارده في وسط الظروف الغير مواتية اللي شغالة في جميع أنحاء العالم، لكن يعني دايما بنحاول نحافظ على حالة التفاؤل لمجابهة التحديات والصعاب يعني. فيعني إن شاء الله يا رب الامور تتحسن وتبقى افضل يعني. فيعني اللقاء اليوم جاي وسط تحديات كتيره جدا يمكن بتمر بيها مش بس المنطقه بل العالم كله. خليني اقول يعني انا هعمل شيفت للغه الانجليزيه على طول، عشان انا عارف ان يعني الكلمه باللغه الانجليزيه، بس يعني حبيت الاول ارحب بيكم واقول لكم اهلا وسهلا. I'm just saying good evening everybody, and I'm saying that today is I'm happy to be with you within all these circumstances which we are facing. I'm saying that I'm trying to be always as optimistic as I can within all these circumstances and challenges going around us. Let me start my presentation about shifting towards a green and sustainable finance, given that Egypt is hosting the COP27 this year in November. Let me say that green and sustainable finance now have been at the forefront of Egypt's priorities for many years, and will continue, of course, to be of key concern to Egyptian policymakers, particularly that we are shifting, not us, everywhere in the world now is trying to comply with the requirement towards shifting financing with serving the climate change and net zero carbon. So we were lucky that we have been going through many of our projects which moving towards green financing and the green projects. Various initiatives and financing tools pertaining to sustainability have taken place, and more in the pipeline. So it is my pleasure to be here today to discuss the efforts of the Egyptian government and the Ministry of Finance in the area of green and sustainable financing. Ministry of Finance effort in green and sustainable financing started with a budget allocation. The budget has been prioritizing green and sustainable investment. Green investment have risen from 15% in the year 2021. In this year, it's about 30% of our investment in the budget is green, complemented with other social initiatives like Haya Karima, and we are targeting that by year 2024-2025, this percentage will reach 50%. The current priority among various sectors of the economy is to attract investment in the green and sustainable project, which is paramount to keeping Egypt on the roadmap of investors and financials. With the realization and as part of Ministry of Finance effort to diversify and widen its investor base, Egypt initiated in September 2020 the first sovereign green bond issued in the Middle East and African continent. And when we issued this, we were the first, and we had no experience at all in issuing a green bond. It was our first time, and we thought that we would go for $500 million, but we were surprised that it was oversubscribed 7.4 times compared to the initial amount of 500 million, and attracted various investors. We thought that it will be only those who are interested in green projects that will be invested, but we found that even the traditional investors who used to invest in the Euro bond, they were investing in this green bond. 16 new first-time investors, we didn't see them before, who care for the both environment and financial return across Europe, United States, East Asia, and Middle East. This was reflected that there is much interest in green financing tools. Also, Egypt Sovereign Green Bond has won the Sovereign Green Market Pioneer Award from Climate Bonds, and also won the ESG and Sustainable Finance Deal of the Year from Bonds, Loans, and Sukuk Middle East Awards. Let me say that currently we are talking about preparing ourselves to issue Sukuk, which some people will say, think about green Sukuk. Of course, Egypt haven't issued before sovereign Sukuk because there was no legal umbrella. Now we have the legal umbrella, we have the law, and we are in the final stage of reviewing the executive regulation, which is about to be sent to the Prime Minister. I talked to the Prime Minister today. I said, I'm ready to send the executive regulation for the Sukuk law, so we can start the process. Last week, we selected 6 international banks, regional and international banks, who will be with us to support us on issuing Sukuk, because as I said, this will be our first time to issue sovereign Sukuk, and we intend to issue a good size Sukuk with all the projects we have. I personally considering the green Sukuk, but my team is advising me, please concentrate first on the first issuance of sovereign Sukuk, because we're still building up our capability, and the team will be responsible to manage it, because the requirements for Sukuk are much more than any type of issuance. Let me say that the company, the Sharia committee, a lot of committees, a lot of work need to be done, but hopefully our target is to, inshallah, between May, June, to be able to issue Sukuk for the first time. And let me say we might have next financial year or so green Sukuk. The proceeds for the green bonds were directed to finance 15 eligible green and climate-friendly projects in the field of renewable energy, sanitation management, clean transportation, pollution reduction and control, sustainable water. The green bond put Egypt on the map of green sustainable finance. Also, we made the first ever green loan. Sometimes these definitions were something like surprising. What green loan? What do you mean by green loan? But we found that even banks sector, the the banking sectors are now more interested to give green loans, which will ensure that the loan will be financing green projects. So the first green loan was $1.5 billion. We succeeded to issue that in November last year, which was another green success. It was covered 3 times oversubscribed, and was really at a good pricing, which we didn't believe it. Really, it was a very good pricing. So we encourage that we got the first green loan for $1.5 billion for a period of, I think, 3 to 5 years from the time we got the loan, and after that we will start the repayment. By the end of 5 years, it is fully repaid. Also, green loan procedures were also directed to projects including safe disposal of medical waste, rehabilitation and lining of irrigation canals, the completion of West Port Said phase 2 destination plant. Also, apart from the financial success of this transaction, we consider this a pivotal opportunity to exemplify the Egyptian government commitment to integrating sustainability in its funding strategy and achieving its national determined contribution (NDC) target as set in the Paris Agreement and Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs). The Ministry of Finance is also working on more financing tools with an ambition to convert the green financing framework, which is in line with the ICMA Green Bond principles, to sustainable financing framework, thereby incorporating social and governance principles and expanding the project targeted under green financing framework. Let me say that we are currently working on the possibility to issue another tranche of green bonds, and also we are thinking about issuing SDGs bonds, because when we are working on such sources of financing, we have to make a commitment about the government and the country to going green, to comply with climate change requirement, to move towards net zero carbon. So we make all this commitment, and the projects we are financing with these proceeds. With climate-related issues dominating the scene globally, the Egyptian government ambitiously opted to host the UN Climate Change Conference COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. And we are currently working heavily to ensure that Sharm el-Sheikh will be totally green by November. So we are working on transforming all the cars to be electric in Sharm el-Sheikh. We are working on having a good big size green area in Sharm el-Sheikh. A lot of work going on all aspects and all directions. We have here in Egypt now the UN Secretary Committee reviewing with us all the arrangement for the COP27. We hope that we will make a difference in COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh this year. So COP27 will be held in November 2022. We will announce the exact dates. We are discussing and finalizing the exact dates for the event. The event is expected to host more than 30,000 participants, leaders from more than 190 countries, leaders of global business industries, negotiators, innovators, researchers, citizens, NGOs from around the world. So it will be a big event. I don't know whether any of us visited the Glasgow for COP26. I was there. We had 7 Egyptian ministers attended the COP27, our President Fattah Sisi attended with a big delegation, so we had a big participation in the COP26, and I was surprised. I was surprised with this size of international leaders. I attended one day, only one day, which was the financing day, which it was heavy discussion with all the leaders from international institutions, World Bank, IMF, OECD, ministers of finance from the United States, from Britain, from around the world, and also heads of big banks. And I was shocked that the amount of attendance and interests is heavy, and heavy discussion about the commitment and about what we should do and all of that. So I recognize that what we should do in order to ensure a success of the COP27 in Egypt. The event is expected to host more than 30,000 participants, all coming together to strengthen a global response to the threat of climate change, to take action steps, implement what was agreed upon in the previous COPs, to establish global relevant agreements. It is a pivotal opportunity for the entire world to come together and accelerate the climate action plan. COP stands for Conference of the Parties. The Conference of the Parties, or COP, to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, is a two-week conference that has taken place annually in late fall since 1995. It is, its core, it's a formal negotiating session for countries to advance their climate commitment and action. A wide variety of stakeholders from around the world together, and they will discuss the climate crisis and solutions. Global leaders, politicians, diplomats, journalists, business, and activists. The government of Egypt's intention is to make COP27 the event where work is following the talk. This will be the slogan that has been formulated during the post-COPs. The Egyptian government's slogan, the COP27, is to bring that together for implementation. And the COP27 is building what was achieved and formulated during the previous COPs and formulated the Kyoto Protocol of 1997 and the Paris Agreement of 2015. We will target achieving the following during COP27: create an enabling environment that allows the different parties to reach consensus on the most important and pressing climate issues, which will be raised and negotiated during COP27 multilateral negotiations. Agree on a plan and actions moving forward to implement commitment made by the countries. And to present and promote number of serious, effective, and implementable initiatives pertaining to the different climate change aspects and issues, which directly benefit the largest number of countries in the world, with special focus to Africa to support their efforts to mitigate and adopt climate change. One of the issues we will host as a Ministry of Finance, we are thinking about hosting the same financing day on the side of the main conference. And now we are thinking also to host the finance semester of Africa in September, in preparation to the conference in November. And this initiative will be to ensure that the Minister of Finance of the African countries will be able to come up with an agreement about what we want to achieve from the COP27, particularly that Egypt is hosting this COP27 on behalf of the African continent. So the last meeting of the stream on the High Committee of the steering committee headed by the Prime Minister and all the relevant ministers, I put this suggestion to the committee and I got approval that I move forward to host this conference in September for all the finance ministers of all African countries to come up with one agreement about what we should communicate as an African Ministers of Finance to the COP27. To achieve these goals, the Egyptian government has initiated an internal process in parallel with a continuous discourse with various international institutions on how unleash sustainable and green finance. I know that you've heard about choosing Dr. Mohamed as a champion for the COP27, and I believe he is the man to be holding this post for the COP27. We are also aware that the implementation of well-crafted policies is essential to encourage sustainable and green investment. Our imminent car manufacturing strategy, as well as other sectoral initiatives, put the green agenda as priority and links incentives and disincentives to sustainability and the climate. We are also aware of the importance of obtaining suggestions and insights from the private sector players, and we welcome your feedback in this regard. Furthermore, during the side event held during the COP, business will have opportunities to showcase, promote their climate change related initiatives. The government of Egypt is diligently working on side event and exhibition guidelines, so interested parties can express their interest by sending brief about their proposed side event or exhibition to the Ministry of Finance, which will be in turn shared with the designated committee, including Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Environment, and the Ministry of Finance. We are working, the three ministries, on related issues, particularly as a Minister of Finance, I'm taking the responsibility of the budget of the COP27, and I have to ensure that I will cover all the costs and I try to make some profit. So we'll ask all of you for, I call it a sponsorship, I call it, say, partnership. Whatever the name, we need money. We will have to get some money, particularly that we need to spend the billions on the conference, so I have to ensure that by the end I will make some from it to come to the treasury. The same committee is also in charge of setting the partnership. Look, I put in the sponsorship, they said, oh, change it to partnership. I said, whatever the word you tell me, they said, this is what the UN Secretary like to say. I said, okay, I don't mind. The partnership criteria for those with a strong climate credential and who are willing to offer their resources, commitment, knowledge, and expertise to making COP27 success, contribute and support. Look, I'm stressing contribute. Contribute and support COP27 efforts to deliver actions on climate change, have a strong climate credential. Interested company can write to me directly and I will channel or request through the responsible committee I chair. As much as we welcome your active participation and partnership, again, this is sponsorship and contribution. We are most importantly looking for making the conference a remarkable event showcasing Egypt's regional role and exhibiting our capabilities to have an impact in addressing the global climate challenges facing us and the future generation. Finally, it is with great honor that I conclude by stating that Egypt has been and will continue to engage in projects and initiatives that would align with its plan for sustainable development in light of vision of Egypt 2030. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Very informative presentation, and with your permission, we're going to share it with the audience. Thank you. I would like to call the Minister and the panelists to come on stage. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. It's really a particular pleasure for me to be engaging again with Dr. Maait and, of course, our distinguished panelists. Nadia was just remarking that we miss this kind of session in London. So make it happen this year. John. Well, the subject today, as Your Excellency elaborated, is the topic of the hour. The world has turned green somehow, and certainly in Egypt for the next few months, green is what we're all going to be talking about. So I would like to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about green bonds, green financing, and in a broader term, sustainable financing, I think is probably a more accurate description. First, let me just give a brief introduction. We're saying green bonds, so we're talking bonds, bond market. Bond market is, as we all know, is the largest and most important source of capital worldwide. The size of that market is over $100 trillion. Actually, it's $120 trillion of debt outstanding globally from the debt market. Maybe 40% in the United States, but the rest is outside the United States. I've been involved in bonds since many, many years, and I've come across bonds, Yankee bonds, bonds offered by foreign entities in the United States, Asian bonds, Panda bonds, Euro bonds, of course, and junk bonds, let's not forget junk bonds, very important. And now we are seeing sort of a rainbow. So we have the green bonds, and we also have brown bonds, and we have blue bonds so far. I'm going to ask Your Excellency about the brown bonds in particular. The brown bonds, transition bonds. But first, let me start with Your Excellency. You elaborated quite clearly your plans for the green financing, sustainable financing. And I have two questions, and then I'll ask our panelists to join me. One, Egypt was the first to issue green bonds. So I will have to ask you, what made you think of tapping this particular source? What was the thinking behind you taking this step, pioneering step, to go for untested, as far as our region is concerned, green bonds? What was the thinking? And what made you confident that actually is going to be a success? That's the first question.
To surprise you, I want Egypt to be the first in the region, in the African continent. So I found it an opportunity to be the first. Let me say, I like to be first in everything. So this opportunity to come to me, to let Egypt be called the first in the Middle East and the African continent. to issue green bonds. We did it, and by the way, we did it like when we talk today about Sukuk, no establishment in the Ministry of Finance, no capabilities, no specialized team. We said we're gonna do it. Let us talk the banks and let us get what we should do in order to take, let me say, this risk and to go to the international market. By this time, to be honest, we were not fully informed about the full commitment we have to do. Not at the time of issuing the green bond, after issuing the green bond. A lot of commitment to be reviewed, to contract a special advisor to prepare the report, the annual report to the investors about how did you use the proceeds, what the progress of projects, you financing by the proceeds. A lot of work, very hard work, and after the success, I found myself blaming a lot of international institutions and saying, look, I was surprised. All this commitment for no rewarding, because the price of the green bond wasn't that much different from the price of the traditional Euro bond. So I said to them, so I got the money roughly at the same cost, at the same price, when a lot of commitment, a lot of work after the machine, I have to do it and I have to pay for it with no reward. The market did not reward us for that. So I said to them, look, you are talking, oh, we have to go green financing and blah, 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 but you are not rewarding us for that. So it came to my mind that I need to go because I need to let Egypt be the first, but I have to say to you, all the commitments and all the work came after the issue. But I would like to do it this year again. I would like to issue green again this year. And you've talked about Banda. We are working heavily to issue samurai bonds. We are working on that. We hope that we will conclude it, inshallah, very soon, to issue samurai in the Japanese market. I think we are in the final stage and we got all the approvals. So hopefully this will be very soon.
Thank you very much. I think I can surmise from what you said about being the first. I think we can expect soon the first green sukuk. Yeah.
This is the reason why I was having a meeting last Thursday, asking my colleagues at the ministry, I would like to go green. But they said to me, oh, be careful. Let us first try sukuk. And when we because sukuk is much, much harder. A lot of committees, a lot of establishment and building capacity and a lot of work need to be done. Particularly that it will be again the first time for Egypt, but not for the region. The region has a lot of scope.
Thank you. The second part of my question, you partially answered already. Your Excellency, you have already answered part of the question, which has. I was going to ask you what process you have in place to monitor the performance of the project that you financed under the green financing to make sure that they achieved what they're supposed to achieve, whether it's reduction of carbon emissions, whatever. Do you have like some sort of process with specific KPIs that you monitor every quarter, every year to see if those projects have actually achieved the environmental objective that was set for them?
Yes, we cooperate with the relevant ministries on that, and the investors who finances these projects, we have to submit an annual report about this project, about what implemented, and a consultant has to review the report and it's like an auditor, it's like an external auditor. This consultant, for example, with the green bond, we worked with the World Bank who advised us on a specified consultant specialized on that, international one, who came and worked with us to make the report, which in order to make such a report, the consultant review all these projects and ensure that in line with what we have promised the investors in order to issue the annual report to all the investors. Yes, we monitor this. According to when you issue the green bond, you have to tell the investors how you're going to measure all the KPIs and all the progress and all the proceeds used in financing that and the progress of this project according to the KPIs. So the consultant will make the audit report and to give a certification to the investors that this is in progress according to what we promised them.
Thank you. I think this is very good for us to know, and I think it's a very good statement to be circulated and shared, because it does tell everybody who does not necessarily know that the green bonds is just not another label to get money from somewhere, but it is actually being used for the benefit of the country and the environment and the economy. So thank you for clarifying that. You mentioned one interesting point. I'm going to go to Khalil Bawab about it because we had a bit of a chat about this particular point. His Excellency said that he put so much work in and his team to get the green bonds out, and that the real work started after the green bond, which is a lot of work, a lot of time, and obviously a lot of money. And he was, if I may say, he was a bit disappointed in saying that the market did not reward me. Now, I don't know if the market is supposed to reward him, but we talked about this, Khalil, the other day. So I'd like to hear what you think. Is this a fair demand? Do you think it's realistic? What do you think?
Definitely a fair demand. There's definitely, I would call it a discount, not a premium, that should be priced in a green bond, where basically there is a cause, and definitely there are some investors saying, I have seen Your Excellency saying that 16 new investors have invested in the bond, which is a great figure, which makes me believe that those 16 investors are having a pocket where basically they only invest in green bonds, which is definitely putting us on the international arena of those investors, which is great. It's definitely annoying not to be priced properly and not to have this subsidized funding, to be completely honest. It's fair. It's a very fair assumption, and definitely the work and choosing the projects and where the proceeds and the process, it's a very lengthy process. It's much easier to issue a normal bond, and now we have the track record for that. But definitely a green bond is demanding, was definitely the reporting and the green verifiers and so forth. But in my very humble opinion, I believe the second issuances and the third and going forward, the market will price it properly, because we will prove to the market is that we have done it once, we have been reporting properly, we have been investing in green bonds, so it's a sustainable basically process. So the more I would say money owners who are investing in green bonds are going to invest in the second issue, which will price it at a discount to normal yields. It's definitely frustrating, but in my very humble opinion, the market will price it in the second and third issuance. And definitely there is a learning curve as well.
Okay, I think we're going to start running a book a bit about this. We'll see. I have a slightly different view, because at the end of the day, green bond, blue bond, euro bond, whatever, it's an investment. It's a debt instrument reflecting the risk, and there is a reward, which is the return. And I think this is principally what the investors are looking for, and that's probably why they did not reward the effort. I might be wrong, I don't know.
Yeah, your bankers disagree.
I'm going to actually to go to you, Todd, as an international banker. You tell me, what do you think? What's your take on this? Do you think international investors will reward, I don't mean Egypt, anybody, an issuer of green bond by reducing the price?
I think there's a rebalance of the assets, and the international investors are shifting quite rapidly, and they're being shifted very much by some regulations and regulatory framework in other parts of the world, in the EU, for instance, and also by the shareholders. So you've got two banks here that are members of the Net Zero Alliance, right? So we both got commitments to have our own operations be net zero by 2030, and to have our portfolios net zero by 2050. And you've got 80% of the world's assets, asset management and lending out there, have joined this alliance. So you've got the insurance companies, the asset management companies, and they're having to start to shift their portfolios. And I think what you'll see is that the green, and I think the second tranche should be better priced, right? There should be, because the hunger is out there, right? You've got many, many new investors coming in. BlackRock, for instance, now has shifted to net zero. So the game is changing. I think green assets will be better priced, and I think non-green assets will start, you'll see the cost of capital start to creep up. Because what you're putting in the risk-reward calculation, the risk is changing, and it's long-term risk. That how sustainable is this business, this operation. So I think the rules are changing. I think Egypt and His Excellency have done a fantastic job being first. I think there's a real advantage to being first.
Thank you, Todd. I guess we'll have to, hang on, let me just, because I want to rephrase this to make sure. Because I really hope you're right, because that will actually mean that the global consciousness is actually paying attention to that, and they're prepared to sacrifice 100 basis points for that. I hope you're right, I don't know. Heba.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, as Egypt's first private sector issuer of green bonds, first of all, very grateful to His Excellency. If you had not done the first offering, we would not have done the first private sector. So honestly, you set the way, and you also showed us a price path, because without that, I don't think it would have been very easy for us to do it. And I have to agree with Your Excellency. The hard work comes after the issuance closed, and there are many things when I say, why did we do it? Why it was a big mistake.
Yeah.
You know, because exactly, you know, I mean, we are long on dollar funding at CIB, and so therefore, actually, we didn't need to borrow that money. We borrowed at a rate that's higher than our cost of fund because we fund ourselves through short-term deposits. But I think that there's a real value in the learning curve of being first. We had to really totally change the way we do the business. With the Green Bond Framework, we had to make commitments about setting in place a task force that meets on a quarterly basis, that reviews all the projects that can be eligible. We have to, as His Excellency said, issue an impact report every year with the impact on greenhouse gas emissions, on energy reductions that are coming from this portfolio. So we've had to change the way even our corporate officers and relationship managers talk to their clients. And Khalil did say a word, he said subsidized. And this is the word that I always get a little bit upset by hearing. Because if you are, protecting your sustainable resources for future generations, then anything that has a monetary value in terms of interest rate, actually, it's not a subsidy when you think about it. Because, I mean, in the end, the banks are all moving towards a net zero commitment, and yet their portfolios are very heavily invested in coal, in fossil and carbon-heavy industries. And in 20 or 30 years, those assets are going to be worth nothing. So in terms of sustainability, there is a huge shift in mentality at CIB. And because we've not been able, with our treasury, for example, to convince them, let's give an edge to our clients in interest rate offered for these loans. No, and we have the ROE and the shareholders. You know, so what are we doing? We're holding like these different sustainability training seminars where we talk to the various industries about the risks associated. How can they mitigate them? What are the different technologies they can use that they're not using now that have a positive impact on their running costs, on their cash flows, and also are contributing to greening. So it's a whole new world and a whole new dialogue that's taking place. So that is where I see the value really.
Very good. It's like Todd said, it's a changing world. And it really would be really, really very positive to see that there's a global consciousness shift towards that. I would then move on to a different subject. But before I go away, Heba, quick question. When you did your green bond, did the investors have a say in what projects you're going to finance?
I mean, I just want to also add something, that for a bank, issuing a green bond is really way more complicated than it is for a corporate client. A corporate client has a project. Actually, the work between a normal bond and a green bond for a corporate client, there isn't that much extra work. All you do is get a second opinion provider that reviews the actual, emission savings, etc. It doesn't cost very much. There are many of them that are locally certified by FRA that can provide this. So for a corporate client, I say definitely go for a green bond. For a bank, it was more challenging. Why? Because you take the proceeds, you have to track them internally, how are they being used, and you can identify some projects that are already in the pipeline, but you need to build up another pipeline, and that pipeline has to keep revolving until the end of the bond in 5 years where there's a bullet payment. Okay. So we didn't identify specific projects, we put the eligibility criteria, and then now we're constantly marketing for our clients and the seminars and webinars to pinpoint and see which are eligible green investments. So we put 6 categories basically, so renewables, clean transportation, climate prevention and adaptation, energy efficiency, and water and wastewater management efficiency. So anything that meets those criteria in terms of partial savings of 15% at least, that can be incorporated.
Okay, thank you. Khalil,
if I may add another thing. I had the luxury and a different capacity where basically I was managing for an international investor or affiliate, where basically they were asking and demanding to have our own ESG policy. Under my current role, we willingly have our own ESG policy. We take or we give ESG scoring for companies. I'm talking about listed equities in that scope. Unfortunately, until the end of 2022, where basically companies are obliged to have their own ESG reports or sustainability reports. Before that, the money owners who are local investors didn't demand that. The disclosure requirements or the listed companies didn't have proper reporting or disclosures. But we willingly, out of belief is that we should have our own ESG, and out of the belief of its benefits to the future and the sustainability of the projects going forward beyond the horizon of our financial models, we had it internally. But the issue is, and to be completely honest, sometimes your performance will be penalized because you're minimizing the investable universe, minimizing basically or reducing the diversification in some instances, until companies are willingly or doing it by force, by willingly to have their own ESG reporting, and money owners to be committed to invest in only ESG compliant companies. It could be via offering some incentives for money owners who are investing in ESG compliant and green bonds and green investments, giving them an incentive, because in reality it's an investment in the future and it's more sustainable, and definitely there is kind of a price. So either the money owner will pay a price of expecting slightly lower returns, or something in between.
Sorry if I just, Khalil's statements have given me some food for thoughts. I have to say that also, as part of the green bond, because, in the end, I'm a banker, right? So when we start talking about eligibility criteria, energy savings and all of this, I have no clue, right? The issuing the green bond forced us to go out and hire a fantastic chief sustainability officer who has hired a team of environmental experts who are actually now meeting at every marketing call with our clients. So this is a total shift, and they have told me that our rating and the investor perceptions of us as being a first-time green issuer has done wonders for us. And it's also brought in a lot of technical assistance to the bank in terms of marketing the clients, which models and what products can be developed for sustainable agriculture, for many different fields. And I think the great thing, the government is doing an excellent job, because also the Frau, Dr. Amran, have issued requirements for Egyptian listed companies to start disclosing their sustainability and climate-related risk profile as of, inshallah, the first financial statements coming out this April. So that's already there. And the Central Bank of Egypt has also put some regulations in place now for Egyptian banks to start looking at climate-related risks of their portfolio, etc. And I think the future is there. I'm sure that with the Task Force on Climate Disclosure and others, they will be, and IFRS are now also looking at how they can sort of incorporate climate risks into the financial statements. I am sure sooner or later, very soon, there will be a higher capital requirement for assets that are heavily polluting and lower capital requirements. And also I know that parts of the government, and Dr. Maait I'm sure is more aware than me, also discussing carbon trading. So when we did our issue, I had a lot of companies, multinationals, calling us and saying, we want to invest in your bond because we get carbon credits. So that's a universe of investors who are Egyptian, who are in polluting industries, have to get to net zero and have to buy carbon trading to sort of equalize that.
Thank you. Todd, you want to say something?
Yeah, just because I think the investment horizon is changing. So I think if for the investors that are chasing short-term investment, short-term return, life is going to change, and they can continue to do that. But I think again, the assets, the risk is starting to change dramatically. So so for us, and all banks are in the same situation, where the regulators are now forcing us to recognize carbon-intensive assets on our books that will obsolete. And they're forcing us to do stress testing against climate change. And what are the industries that are going to be impacted by that? So their regulators are taking a much longer term view, which is going to start to change the short-term behavior of the financial institutions. So I think that those investors chasing short-term returns are going to have they're going to have to change. The option of what they can buy. We're in a transition period though. There's no magic event that's going to flip us all overnight. But over the next, I'd say 5 to 10 years, this has gone much faster. In my experience, this shift has gone much faster in banking than I've ever seen anything. And it's driven not by regulators, it was driven by shareholders. So.
Quite right. I think what we're seeing really is a gradual and accelerating shift in awareness and in behavior, for sure. I mean, we all remember Greenpeace, the tree huggers. It was kind of a romantic, somewhat silly notion. It's nothing about it. It's real, it's happening, it's taking shape, it is being institutionalized. You championed this here, and obviously you want to do more. So it's great.
Yeah, but that being said, Karim, I have to say as well, even though I'm agreeing with everyone on the panel, I think His Excellency was asking for suggestions on how to sort of encourage more sustainable green investment in Egypt. And I do believe that there are some things that Egypt may consider at some point, such as, for example, the Central Bank of Egypt saying, well, the reserve requirement, can be a little bit less for your portfolio that's actually invested in green assets. The FRA can, give a higher tax incentive in terms of, income.
Don't mention tax.
Corporate bonds, green corporate bonds, things like that.
Take it back.
No, and Dr. Maait can also put a carbon tax on us, because then the heavily polluting industries carry the tax of those who are getting less. So those are my 3 suggestions to be taken.
Give a leeway.
They consider.
We have to be ready
because I will state an example that happened with us. Before COP26, we were arranging a loan to finance a project with, let me say, an international institution. After COP26, they said, oh, we have to say sorry. We are not going to continue because our regulations has changed and we cannot finance this because of the pollution and the climate requirement and blah, blah, blah. Why I'm saying that, we have to be ready now that there will be a lot of restrictions on what type of investment the international financial institutions, the banking sector, and also financial, even corporate financial companies also, because this will be an accelerating trend going very fast to us. So we have to be ready, number one. Number two, as a government, we will be under heavy pressure to introduce some green taxes or some green stamps or these types of imposing some financial burden on all or penalties on all types of polluted activities or products or manufacturing. This is number two, and we started to see demand from international institutions that we have to think about them. Number three, we've heard that Europe will introduce some sort of custom duties on products produced in countries where they have a specific level of carbon or pollution or not complying with the climate change requirements or commitments. So we have to think about that, our exports to such markets. If we reach a situation when we say, no, this country is not complying, this country is not achieving the targets, so we have to be ready for that. The last, which I worry about, that we will be imposed with a lot of commitments which will affect us negatively because we are, negotiating for COP27, for example, on behalf of emerging markets and developing countries, emerging countries and developing countries, and also Africa. We think that we should not penalize for something which we are not responsible for. They are much responsible for what happened, and they have to pay for that, not us. So this is also a point which I would like to thank you.
This will be a very interesting discussion, a hard one. No, I think to sum it up, as Aldous Huxley said, it really is a brave new world. One last thing before we open the floor for questions to His Excellency or any of the panelists. Just one last comment for Khalil in particular. You are the leading issuing house in Egypt for corporate bonds. That's your target anyway. But from all the colors that we talked about, I feel that the brown, the transition bonds, are the most suited and appropriate for corporate Egypt. And you're always talking about how to create a corporate market. I think that's the way.
Definitely. We at Master Capital were always wearing the helm of developing the fixed income markets, the corporate universe. And definitely sustainability bonds or green bonds or brown bonds is definitely on our agenda. We have been basically working on many initiatives with many of our clients. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, some of the clients delayed some of their investments. Let me say it this way. Some of them are afraid of the process after the issuance and the reporting. Maybe they're not as brave enough as His Excellency and the great team and the Minister of Finance. But we're trying to basically accommodate the clients and trying to push for it. Going back to the brown bond, I believe it's very much suitable for we have a lot of polluting industries in Egypt, and to be completely honest, the brown ones saves the day. We're basically investing in projects that's moving from the polluting to the non-polluting. Even if it's target, you don't have to be 100% green. I'll share a surprise because I'm following and we have a project for that where basically we're thinking of issuing an ETF that follows listed securities with a low carbon target. Believe it or not, one of the companies is Aramco. I found it very hard to find it there, to be honest. But they have a plan to reduce their carbon emissions. They have a target, they're disclosing and reporting. So by that, at least they managed to enter that index. Definitely. So the question is, I don't want to brand anything here. All of our initiatives and endeavors is basically investing in the future. We're investing for the future of, not of our kids, of our grandkids, because they are the ones who are going to pay the price. We didn't pay the price much, to be honest, but future generations are going to pay the price. So it's all about sustainability. And sustainability, Heba mentioned, is that projects will cease to exist if it's not turning to green, and it will not be sustainable. So we need to worry of that risk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the ultimate message from here, all of this, is awareness. It's all about awareness, creating more and more continuously awareness across all levels of society and business and industry. Thank you, Alexi. Thank you all very much.
And if I may ask one thing, one of the angles is definitely finance, but at the end of the day, it's all about human behavior. So I believe from what Heba said is that the team at CIB started to be more aware of basically all the green initiatives. And so if one of the pillars of the COP27 would be basically changing the behavior of people, because we need to start with people. If we talk about financing, if we talk about projects, and the people are not acting much, to be completely honest, and you find your kids or your grandkids asking you to be more environmentally aware. So it's coming from the younger generation.
All about awareness. Thank you very much. I think we're now opening the floor for questions. Any questions you would like to ask to His Excellency or any of the panelists, please go ahead. We have mic for the lady here and the gentleman back there.
I just have my name is Inji Rasach. I am a lawyer, a partner in international law firm in Cairo. And my question is to His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Maait. As a lawyer, I'm maybe more concerned about the legislative or let's say the enforcement of the measures which are going to be introduced in order to apply and ensure that people are compliant. Since we are talking about human behavior and its importance in making sure that we are moving towards green projects and green energy. So I know that in the investment law, for example, you have already introduced special incentives for projects which are established under the umbrella of the investment law in order if they are, let's say, more environmental friendly. So is there, let's say, a plan in order to encourage also existing projects that you try to generalize these incentives so that you would give maybe more of an incentive to the people to move towards green energy? And second, since at least like from experience, moving to green energy is also quite costly, is there also a plan to finance small producers and small factories in order and also give them awareness campaigns to help them move? Because as you know that in Egypt there is also a problem with awareness, especially with waste disposal and recycling. And I think at least that's like as a maybe advise that I think also maybe they should be able to focus on recycling projects and waste disposal and trying to somehow encourage investments in this, and also maybe also through the bonds issue, so that you would also sort out the problem, because Egypt has a major problem with waste, as we know, and many people still use very unfriendly ways of disposing of the waste. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And the first part of your question is how, if we are thinking about imposing something on the people in order to comply with commitment, let me say there were some discussions about how to move towards net zero, and how to ensure that we move gradually towards these objectives, and also gradually to impose some type of penalty or some type of taxes on those who will not comply. This discussion has not been materialized, but there are some discussions about what types of penalties, what type of taxes. Yes, we would like, our factories, our projects to move gradually towards complying with climate change and net zero. So it will not be, we will not move surprisingly to the community. We will have a discussion about how to move gradually and ensure that we will comply with our commitment as a country. Otherwise, we will have a problem, because many international markets will impose restrictions on our export to these markets, will impose some penalties. We may come to a stage where we say, no, we will not accept your products because you are not compliant. So we have to prepare ourselves to that. One of the preparation is to impose something. But I am in favor of starting with incentives. I will give you first incentives. I will encourage you first. In a later stage, I will start saying penalties, because I have given you incentives, but you are not yet. So I will start to penalize you. This is number one. Green energy cost. Let me say, at the beginning, it is at a very high cost, but gradually, like solar energy, gradually the cost is declining. Now, it's very cheap now to get electricity from solar, although it started very high, very, very high. The very high cost now is hydrogen. Hydrogen is at the highest cost. But we have to move, we have to go, we have to start. And also, it's a new technology. It's like desalination is very costly, but we have to go because we have a water problem. So I cannot wait and say this is high cost. No, I have to move very quickly, and I have to take all the measures, even if it is costly. Give you an example. When we have shortage in electricity, because we want to sort out this problem as fast as possible, we pay it high cost, but we sorted out the problem. Now we get the electricity at a reasonable cost, and we are exporting, we are selling. So this is number three. Yes, some the latest is hydrogen is very high cost, but we have to do it, and we have to go on it to these sources of energy. But also we have to be prepared to switch gradually from gasoline, from octane, from all these sources of pollution to solar, wind, hydrogen, and all of that. These are the future. Yes, recycling projects, we are very much interested. This year, really, I have invested heavily in a project started in Cairo, in some suburbs, for recycling, and also we are going to put incentives for getting energy from waste and recycling, and I will subsidize this to encourage using the waste. So we have a lot of initiatives and we are working on them. All the studies finished. Now we are starting in the implementation process.
Thank you. I think there's a question from at the end table there. Mike can help us.
Until he gets the microphone, I was just going to tell Your Excellency also, for example, one of the studies that I've read is that the real estate sector is one of the sectors that contributes 40% maybe of all the pollution, etc. So I was wondering, for example, for real estate developers to be forced to provide an energy performance certificate to the government where they are using materials that will assist in insulation and minimizing energy consumption, etc. This is something that also might be something that's worth, it's non-monetary, but it's...
Do you have your mic, sir?
Yes, I do. Yes. Hello to everybody and Your Excellency and distinguished panel. My name is Paul Williams from Envirotech. We specialise in water treatment, industrial wastewater treatment and desalination. So my question really is, usually when we go to a lot of our customers in Egypt or wherever, it always comes down to the financing, the capex cost of doing these type of treatment positions. So what I was going to ask is, do you think the green bonds might ever be, if you like, available for people in order of, well, as a way of guaranteeing, if you like, a loan, for example, for carrying out these sort of wastewater treatment plants for maybe end user customers as well, and also as far as government is concerned, you know, with these desalination projects coming up, as to whether if we were to bring finance to these particular projects or, you know, contributions, as to whether those green bonds might be available as a means of guaranteeing, if you like, our investment as well.
For the first part of your question, my short answer is yes. Really, I think about, let me say, creative solutions and initiatives, particularly for desalination, because this is high priority for us. To be honest, I want the government to ensure that all the possibilities, all the guarantees, all the different types of financing to be used for desalination projects. It's a huge investment, and we as a government under huge pressure for all these projects, mega projects going on around the country to finance. So I personally prefer if green bonds to be used as guarantee for such a project. I will go for it. This is number one. Number two, my favorite solution is public-private partnership. I want the private sector to take all these projects with a commitment and guarantee from the Ministry of Finance to buy the product from you. I'm willing to go with desalination with private sector. I'm not in favor to allocate more resources for desalination, although I'm saying it's a priority, but I would like the private sector to heavily involve it. If you need guarantee, I will give guarantee. If you need backed by green bond, I will do it. If you need to do it with triple B, I'm there, and it is at the Ministry of Finance. So definitely, this is a national security, and we are willing to welcome any of these ideas for desalination projects.
Thank you, Rexy. I think that was a very comprehensive, positive response. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's dinner time. So thank you all very much, and thank you, Your Excellency, my dear panelists. Thank you, the audience.